For most of the populace of the Wakandan forest camp, it was just like any other day. The Human Torch was spending the afternoon looking after the children with Luke Cage and Spider-Man, boiling tea and passing out gifts to the youngsters. But soon, news of Tony Stark's abduction spread. It was Jessica Jones who let Johnny, Luke, and Peter know that Tony was reported missing, and they could tell something was wrong from one look at her crestfallen face. Meanwhile, the community's precision strike team investigated the scene of the crime. Tony didn't come home last night, Pepper Potts told the assembled Blade, Honey Badger, and Wolverine. Steve Rogers showed up, she managed through tears. They went for a walk. They never came back. But Gabby was already noticing the inconsistencies in this story. Captain America wasn't here. The young Weapon X survivor sniffed out. Someone else was here. Laura Kinney followed up more specifically. Yes, she said. I know that scent. Mystique. No sooner had she rooted out the intruder that Laura, Gabby, and Blade rushed out to the forest with Pepper in tow. When they reached the scene of the kidnapping, Laura began putting even more pieces together. Tony fell here, or was knocked down, she deduced, trailing her fingers across the forest floor. He bled a little, but not too much. Mystique wasn't the only one with him. Just then, Blade noticed the unmistakable piles of dust surrounding the clearing. Stark put up a fight, he said. A lot of vampires died. Wolverine took another sniff and then turned solemnly to Pepper. I'm sorry, he said. I know who took Tony. Iron Man's abduction quickly went up the rank of command all the way to the capital city of Wakanda, where Black Panther debated the matter with his closest advisor. If Apocalypse has taken Stark, Dr. Doom told the heroes present, we need to recover him. Immediately. Johnny Storm, Pepper Potts, and Spider-Man stood in the chamber having delivered the news, while Lunel Lafayette, Shuri, Sue Storm, and others were present for the hearings as well. Stark is the greatest weapons maker who has ever lived, Moon Girl noted, before Doom took control of the audience once more. T'Challa, he pleaded to the king, the paradise you're trying to create here will go up in flames. In the hands of Apocalypse, Stark is a ticking time bomb. Instantly, a crew of heroes offered themselves up as recruits to go and rescue Tony. But in times of danger, sometimes caution is the best approach. We have spent avoiding conflict with Apocalypse and his forces, Doom told T'Challa. We can't rush into this. The Black Panther thought for a moment. We do have someone who can rush into this, the king said. And so the mutant Quicksilver was sent on a recon mission to uncover quickly and quietly what Apocalypse might be using Stark for, and how worried the hero should be about his plans. Pietro sprinted straight into the lion's den, not planning on slowing down one iota. But when Pietro's eye saw who Apocalypse was using to generate energy, his feet couldn't help but grind to a halt. Father, Quicksilver whispered up at the entombed Magneto, whose powers were being harnessed and enslaved by Apocalypse for his own gain. Immediately, Ansabah's legions of mind-controlled heroes leapt at Quicksilver, but were unable to lock down the speedster. Quicksilver ducked and dodged his way directly towards his father, hoping to unshackle him, but fell smoldering to the ground after colliding with a defense matrix. Should we lock him away with the others? Dr. Octopus asked his leader. No, Apocalypse ordered. Let's send him back. Moments later, back in Wakanda, Quicksilver returned to the king's chamber as if his mission had gone off without a hitch. Quicksilver, the Panther asked, what have you learned? But Pietro's mind was not his own. The Human Torch was the first to realize something was off. Pietro? He asked before Quicksilver hurtled across the room at top speed. In his mind-controlled state, Pietro snapped the neck of Okoye before anyone could even react. Then, ducking through webs shot by Spidey, Pietro took her spear and drove it through the chest of Johnny Storm just as he activated his flames. Shock and horror momentarily froze the room. Johnny! Sue Storm screamed. Sue, the Human Torch managed before Jean Grey shut down Pietro's mind and sent the unwitting assassin collapsing to the ground. The Invisible Woman ran to her brother and sat with him as his pierced heart leaked fiery ichor and massive amounts of energy. Sue, Johnny whispered, I can't control it. You have to get away. Run. But Sue leaned in, touching her forehead to her brother's. No, she promised. I'm not leaving you. Shielding the rest of her friends from her brother's dying supernova, Sue Storm saved everyone in that chamber that day from burning alive. But her brother, tragically, was gone for good. But before we see what our heroes do next, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss an upload, and smash that like button for some plot armor today. After the Human Torch's tragic demise, an interrogation of the wounded Quicksilver commenced. After his brainwashing had worn off, Pietro told all that he had seen of Apocalypse's master machine and his involuntary recruits controlled by Kilgrave. He also revealed to a grieving Sue Storm that her husband and possibly children were still alive. But even as they prepared to embark on their journey to stop Ansabah Nur and free his workers, Apocalypse was planning his own counterattack in Paris. "They'll try to stop us," he said to a slithering, mysterious ally. "They will not succeed," the Shadow growled. "Are the three of you ready?" Apocalypse asked. "Yes," Venom said, their mouth already frothing in anticipation. "We are ready to hunt." The next day, the largest ship in Black Panther's armada sailed back into port. The fallen helicarrier turned galleon was helmed by Nightcrawler and Nick Fury, with a large crew of mutants and heroes alike. Storm, Black Panther's bride and queen, kept the huge vessel on course by manipulating the winds as they sailed. When they returned home, Ororo and T'Challa embraced, and the helicarrier unloaded the 112,000 refugees they had rescued. The couple's daughter, Princess Nkosazana, leapt into her mother's arms when she arrived back in Wakanda, and for a moment, it seemed as though all was right with the world. Then, news of Tony's kidnapping and all that came with it reached the seafarers' ears when the advanced team of heroes led by Pepper Potts wearing her husband's new steampunk suit marched onto the ship. Though Fury, Nightcrawler, and Storm all agreed that their crew was exhausted from long weeks at sea, they agreed to turn around and head back to Europe with their friends and try their best to liberate Apocalypse's captives. As the heroes parted ways with their friends and family, no one had a harder time saying goodbye than Peter and MJ. "May didn't want to be here?" Peter asked, looking around for his daughter. "No," MJ answered. "She's back at the house with Danny. She's scared, Peter. She doesn't want to lose you." MJ leaned in to whisper into Peter's ear. "Come back to us, Tiger." With their goodbye said, the intrepid team of Earth's mightiest post-apocalyptic heroes set off towards Europe. Storm worked tirelessly, day and night, to keep the ship on course, but eventually she grew fatigued and needed her well-earned rest. That night, amidst the serenity of the moonlit ocean, the heroes made their final decisions as to their plan of attack. "This should not simply be thought of as a rescue mission," Doom said. "We strike, we kill Apocalypse and any loyal to him. We take Europe." Wolverine was especially cautious hearing the once dictator speak of an invasion and war. But just then, a familiar scream from on deck sent shivers down Spider-Man's neck. When the team raced out into the moonlight, Peter, Luke, and Jessica saw something that terrified them all. Their children, May Parker and Danny Cage, were running across the ship, clearly having stowed away as the helicarrier left port. "What are you doing here?" Jessica yelled at the two kids. "I'm sorry," Danny told her mother. "We wanted to come with you, but we knew you'd say no." Then May turned to Peter, anxious. "And then my head, it hurts." "Mine too," he said as his spider sense began to flare up. "What is it?" Nick Fury asked, but it was too late. "Move!" Spidey cried out, but in his old age, Fury was too slow. A flaming chain whipped up from the seafloor, ripping a hole through Nick Fury's rib cage. "Peter," he managed to say before a yank sent the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D. overboard. Before their shock of grief could even be registered, a pack of Ghost Raiders leapt over the side of the ship, bloodthirsty and raging. Doomed pirates, Peter tells us, who made a deal with the devil as their ship sank when the world ended. Now they were setting themselves upon the helicarrier, and it seemed the hero's rescue mission might be over before it even started. With years of practice behind him, Colossus wasted no time in serving up a double fastball special with both Laura and Gabby in either arm. The two Wolverines carved their way through the Marauders, looking to slow down the assault as best they could. "We have to make it to the Guardians of the Port," Nightcrawler yelled to his crew, who scrambled to make way as fast as they could. Machine gun fire rained down on the helicarrier as Sue Storm did her best to keep every member of the crew protected. The Ghost Raiders' burning ship grew ever closer as the helicarrier tried to outdistance the pirates, while Nightcrawler dove off the side to try to save what remained of Fury's body. But at the last instant, Fin Fang Foom erupted from the depths of the ocean and began laying waste to the Ghost schooner. Riding atop the ancient dragon was none other than a giant Scott Lang, who saddled the giant fire-breathing lizard like a warhorse. "Fire!" Lang bellowed, and his dragon unleashed its magical fire onto the Ghost Raiders, reducing their hull to splinters with a stomp for good measure. Ant-Man smiled down at his old friends. "How was the trip?" he joked, before his eyes landed on Nightcrawler kneeling over the body of his fallen co-captain, Nick Fury. Having finally reached the shores of Portugal, the team's first act in Europe was to lay their friend and leader Nick Fury to rest. Many tears were shed at his funeral, and even Deadpool, who met the heroes once they arrived on dry land, gave Fury a moment of silence when he heard the news. Fury was one of the good ones. he said at the funeral, grieving along with the rest of the advanced team who had a grand mission awaiting them. And speaking of their mission, back in Paris, Apocalypse was wasting no time in creating his mysterious weapon. "Can it be done?" he asked Stark and the rest of the super geniuses working for him under Kilgrave's mental suggestion. "I understand what you want," Tony affirmed, "but I need to see the size of the problem." To give his engineers an understanding of their missions, Ansabah took his mind-controlled minions on a field trip to the center of the Earth. There, the colossal husk of the Unmaker lay dormant, trapped in a state of eternal slumber by the EMP portal conjured by Doctor Strange in his final moments. Apocalypse told his assembled geniuses to inhabit it, to take control of a power beyond that of even a celestial or god. I would not need long, minutes, perhaps an hour. The ancient emperor wanted Tony and the rest of the minds at his disposal to find a way to neutralize the EMP field, while he and Sabah Nur conquered the Unmaker and took its power for himself. Contain the power of a neutron star for an hour. Beast marveled at the task at hand. "I ask again," Apocalypse said. "Can it be done?" "It's impossible," Iron Man told him. "But I'm always up for a challenge." As Tony grew ever closer to giving Apocalypse the key to universal domination, May Parker and Danny Cage were getting a stern talking to by their parents for sneaking aboard the helicarrier under their noses. "They can't come with us," Peter said, but it was Deadpool who advised Peter that leaving the two children alone on a strange continent wasn't exactly the safest option to choose from. "May, I am so disappointed in you," Peter lamented, knowing that he had no other choice but to bring his daughter along. "I'm sorry," May apologized, but her spirits soon picked up when Jessica chimed in. "Peter, as insane as it sounds, I think the girls are better off with us." "Then it's settled," Deadpool piped up. "To the Deadmobile!" Wade exclaimed as he unveiled a run-down double-decker bus decorated with vague Deadpool graffiti. The heroes reluctantly climbed aboard the bus and the forces of good set out across the European countryside towards Paris. There, they knew that one way or another their mission would come to an abrupt end. That night, as the campfire offered a dim light to the heroes, Wolverine thought she smelled something disturbing in the breeze. "But the scents are faint," she told Blade and Honey Badger. "I'd suggest deliberately so. Staying downwind," Gabby offered. "Yes," Laura told her. "Something is hunting us." "Then let's go hunt the hunter," Blade told his teammates. Quietly, the three stalked off into the woods, away from the campsite. Laura could tell the danger was imminent and warned the other two to keep their guards up. Then suddenly, a flash of black and red shot from the treetops and two spiked tentacles impaled Wolverine twice through the chest. Blade freed Laura in an instant, but their element of surprise had been lost. Another tentacle slammed into Blade and sent the vampire hunter flying through the woods. With just Gabby left, she didn't stand a chance, and her screams of pain reverberated through the forest, alerting the campsite to the incoming danger. "Stay together," Dr. Doom commanded. "Stay near the fire." May wasn't worried because her spider sense hadn't even so much as twinged yet. But when the horrifying visage of Venom leapt out of the darkness towards the heroes, holding Honey Badger aloft on an impaled spike, May Parker felt fear clutch her heart. Of course, this wasn't just any old Venom. This was an amalgam of both the Venom and the Carnage symbiotes coalescing around one body, one host. This creature represented one of the most powerful symbiotic forms ever seen before, and they lived up to the hype. Lashing out first at Moon Girl, Venom's tendrils were blocked by the bravery of Devil Dinosaur, who put himself between Lunella and a horrible death. The dino then plucked Venom out of the air in his powerful jaws and hurled the being across the forest. As Wolverine and Honey Badger healed, Spider-Man and Deadpool jumped to their friend's defense. Though Deadpool was highly distracted when he heard the noise Peter's new non-electric web shooters made. "Your new web shooters go thwap," Wade noticed, incredulous. "Wade!" Peter scolded, fighting for his life. Deadpool chuckled. Thwap. The Venom Carnage symbiote did not stop coming, and for a moment managed to hold the entire team of heroes to a standstill by itself. But when Pepper Potts fired up her Iron Man suit and doused the symbiotic horror with a torrent of fire, it was the beginning of the end for the symbiotes. Nearly incinerated on the spot, any fight that either Venom or Carnage had left in them after Pepper's flamethrower was quickly quashed by Storm, who threw so much lightning at the beast that Sue Storm had to shield the rest of the heroes to keep them safe. When the dust cleared, what lay on the forest floor wasn't the Venom or Carnage sludges, but the groaning body of Miles Morales, free at last from the horror of the symbiote's control. "Pete," Miles managed weakly. "Miles?" Peter exclaimed. "Hey, we've got you, man." But Miles wasn't looking for pity. He had information he knew the heroes needed. "No, He told them, "Listen, nothing is gonna be okay. I know how Apocalypse is going to end the world." As the exhausted heroes once more settled around the fire, Miles told them the tale of how he and the two symbiotes came to find one another. In the early weeks of the fall of civilization, Venom had attached itself to Miles and the two made a good team. They kept each other alive. Until Carnage came, Miles admitted. After which, the two symbiotes wrestled control over their shared body from Miles and became the monster Apocalypse had employed. Miles told the team how Apocalypse was planning to stop the EMP for long enough to steal the Unmaker's powers. And at that exact moment in Paris, Tony was explaining to his fellow scientists how creating an adamantium globe around the portal might absorb the EMP waves for just long enough. The only problem? Apocalypse needed more adamantium than just Cap's shield. But of course, Enzaba knew where he could find more. Deep beneath the earth, in a cell built especially for him, Logan sniffed the air as a portal opened opposite him. Cyclops, being held by Apocalypse and flanked by Kilgrave, appeared before the original Wolverine. "Logan, you can't let them do this," Scott begged his old friend as Kilgrave removed his visor. "You have to stop me." Then, as Logan drew his claws and raced towards Scott, Kilgrave whispered in Cyclops' ear, "Let it go." Wolverine was disintegrated by the searing beam that erupted from Scott Summers' eyes when he was forced to look one last time at Logan. Even as he tried to stop Cyclops, Wolverine's skin and flesh were burned away in a matter of seconds until there was nothing left of him but the metal coating of his bones. Apocalypse presented the skeleton to Tony, saying only, "You have your adamantium." Afterwards, Doc Ock asked for an audience with Enzaba and explained his concerns as they walked. "If you move your mind into the Unmaker," Octavia said, "I can't guarantee your current powers would work. You may not be able to teleport out." Then Doc Ock's brilliant brain started to uncover what Apocalypse's true intentions were. The only way out for you, he realized, would be to break the planet apart. Apocalypse only grinned. "Yes, and the problem with that is, Otto looked horrified. It's the planet we're all standing on." Apocalypse understood that his most devoted henchman had suddenly lost faith in his master. "I can't have someone so clever trying to think his way out of this," the ancient pharaoh told Octavius before his eyes flared up and his telekinetic abilities tore at Doc Ock's arms until he ripped the doctor clean in half. As Enzaba finalized his doomsday plans, the heroes had finally made their way to Paris. Spidey made May and Danny promise to stay behind under the protection of Devil Dinosaur while the grown-ups threw themselves into the fray. But the team had a plan, concocted by two of the best minds on the planet, Moon Girl and Dr. Doom. "We'll be right back," Peter said as he hugged his daughter, and the heroes set off towards the final confrontation. The opening move was Storms, who blasted Apocalypse's base at the Louvre with a Category 5 hurricane that shattered his defenses and sent him underground to take cover. "Kilgrave!" Enzaba ordered as he made his retreat. "The cells. Let them out." The Purple Man brought in their reinforcements, a mind-controlled Avengers team of his own to slow and perhaps even quash the rebellion where it stood. After a moment of chilling calm, the heroes clashed against their oldest friends, some of whom they believed were long dead. It was friend against friend, pitted against one another at the end of the world. While Doom took down Dracula and offered him a deal, the Purple Man stood amidst the carnage and laughed. That is, until one of Deadpool's well-aimed bullets tore through Kilgrave's brain, killing the Purple Man where he stood. "Wade!" Jessica yelled. "Oh man, Jess," Deadpool apologized. "I feel like I've robbed you of some much-needed catharsis here." But despite Deadpool's violent outburst, taking down the Purple Man was the only thing standing between the heroes and Apocalypse. All those under Kilgrave's spell were freed, and their minds became their own again. Standing together with their forces doubled in size, together the forces of Earth approached Enzaba Nur, prepared to do anything to take him down. But even as they approached Apocalypse's chamber, Spider-Man knew that victory was anything but certain. Once he teleported, we wouldn't be able to reach him. With his power, nothing could stop him. But as Apocalypse raised his fist to teleport himself out of reach, he found his power frizzled between his fingers. Sue Storm, the only living person who had seen the Unmaker's first awakening, stepped into the room. Apocalypse shuddered. "I can't reach it." "That would be the small force field I put around your frontal lobe," Sue said, anger bubbling in her gut. In an instant, Lunella and Victor's well-laid plan came together to perfection. Nightcrawler TP'd Apocalypse's armor off his form, and in the blink of an eye, Dracula drove his fangs into Enzaba's neck. The moment Dracula injected his venom, Apocalypse became a vampire, and 1 second later, Blade was upon the two Hellspawn. He drove a giant stake through the hearts of both monsters at once, and with one fleet swipe of his silver sword, he severed the heads of Apocalypse and Dracula together. After the threat was neutralized, the heroes collectively breathed a massive sigh of relief. Families were reunited, friends embraced gleefully. Apocalypse's reign of terror had ended, and the new world that had sprung up in the wake of the end times was safe. For even more chaos, what happens when everyone suddenly turns into Spider-Man?